Today I want to talk about Kinnert and McCarthyism in general. As you all know, McCarthy was a senator who had a lot of hearings of citizens that were suspected of being Russian infiltrators or Soviet infiltrators. And we now hear the narrative that this was all wrong. There were no infiltrators of the Soviet Union, that it was just a scare. A lot of people in Hollywood were blacklisted when in fact they were just innocent individuals and so on. And of course, this has a true core. There are people who had been harassed for the false reason. Albert Einstein had been thought to be a communist, and I believe that Kurt Gödel, the mathematician, was probably driven into suicide by people actually looking into his home and investigating him on the Secret Service level. He was paranoid and stopped eating, the general thought is that he was just crazy. But he was persecuted his entire life. He was a Jew from Austria, and first the Nazis came, and then he moved to the US, and it's likely that he still saw certain anomalies that he identified as persecution, and it might be that some anti-communist zealots may have been after him, even though he was not a communist or anything of that sort. I think there were a lot of these mistakes, and McCarthyism has a dark side. Yes, but that does not mean that there was not such a thing as real infiltrators, people who were paid from East European nations, from the Warsaw Pact nations, like the Soviet Union itself, but also from East Germany, for instance. And today I want to talk about the effect and how that differs from the pure Republican in name only Reno type. People suggest that Paul Ryan is a P in the air because he is standing up for certain conservative values. He is an individualist. He is I would say anti-totalitarian. He is pro business freedom and so on. He does actually have a lot of conservative viewpoints on his agenda. And for me, that qualifies him as a conservative. He is more a conservative, at least, than a liberal. But people thought that he was a right-winger in name only, because he was not speaking about immigration and the most pressing issues of the day that conservatives tackled in a different way than the left. Yes, these people do exist, and it's really hard to tell who is who. A very prominent example of an individual that is very hard to decide if that was a purposeful infiltrator or just a Republican or a right-winger in name only, is Angela Merkel, obviously. She said everything in her career. She's for the women quota and against the women quota, for state surveillance and against state surveillance, for free speech and against free speech. She's basically everything, even the most hotly debated talking points of the day. She had been both anti-multiculturalism, for multiculturalism, anti-immigration, and for immigration. So it is really hard to tell from an outsider if she had always been a left-winger who just wanted to infiltrate the party, lie to everybody, who just happens to be a good actor, always so-called apparatchik, somebody who is just acting to be more accepted by the powerful people. That's the hyper-narcissist phenotype, which usually makes a career in dictatorships. But also there are hints that she was always a far left individual and just looked for ways to survive the end of the dictatorship that her parents joined voluntarily when they moved with her as a little child to the East. What speaks for this thesis is that Angela Merkel actually tried to join the Social Democrats and openly said that she considered joining the Green Party at some point in her life, but later then decided to join the CDU. She just saw it as a vehicle, probably, for the views that she already had. So it's more likely that she was a determined ideologue than somebody who's just an apparatchik who looks for a way to move upwards. But in her case, it really is hard to decide. So she's not the best example for an infiltrator. And I will go to Diana Kinnert in a moment. The problem is not as prominent in America. I saw a woman called Saba Ahmed who joined the Republican Party and was trying to build up a platform and a network within the Republican Party to reach out to the Muslim community and harass freedom fighters like Pamela Geller and so on and so on. There are a lot of videos on YouTube where you find her speak on major news channels and so on, but she is not a big household name. In America, these people do not actually do well in the actual elections. They may be in the media circus for a while and then they can build up a think tank of sorts, but voters will identify them as fake, and therefore they rather vote a real competitor, a competitor that does actually believe in the things that he or she says. This is very different in Germany, and this is why I want to raise the issue of infiltration now. We have this Diana Kinnert who appears always with a strange hat and a hipster dress up to, as she says, make the Conservative Party more urban, more youthful, more green, open to new ideas, which are always old ideas. This is an entire marketing warpath that she's on. She does not speak about actual content, actual ambitions that she wants to see put into practice. What drives her is the attempt to turn the union into a Green Party. Yes, her news site is called News Green, and she is introduced by Wikipedia as somebody who is not just a politically active woman, but also an entrepreneur. And this is supposed to sound capitalist or conservative. Her website, Newscreen, has the tabs overview, politics, green cities, renewables, innovation, healthy living, parenting, empowerment, and controversy. So it is the picture, the first picture that I see is already a windmill park and so on. So this is clearly a Green Party person with a Green Party agenda. Her book publisher, Rowohl, which belongs to Holzbrink, the publisher that also issues the newspapers Zeit and Tagesspiegel, describes her as a liberal, urban, open-minded person with an intercontinental background. Obviously, it's no longer enough to have just an international background. You must be intercontinental so you don't cheek out, and I believe that you also will not be good enough if you just come from America or Canada or Australia or South Korea. Anyway, she is an intercontinental urban dweller, and what's interesting is that she's described as somebody who was raised urbanly or educated urbanly. There's this phrase, großstädtische Erziehung, which really means the crossover between the words race and education. So the location where you live determines your mindset. That's the idea behind it. And if you read the newspapers that belong to our publisher, Zeit and Tagesspiegel, they have this view that people who live in the city are morally and culturally and intellectually superior to people who live in the countryside. They make a big deal out of this. They are more educated and more sophisticated than you. She is also introduced as having two companies or being active professionally in two separate spheres, let's say. And beside that main website and her hub, I would say, this green news stuff, she is obviously vice president for global media news, GmbH. GmbH is our limited. And you have to help me, and a consultant für Green Window Services. This is verbatim. I read the German word in it as it is. There are more English words than German words. So I give you what für means. Für is for. So I read it again. So she is the she's the vice president of a global media news at GmbH, and also a consultant for Green Window Services. Okay, so now I have translated the German für into English. Maybe you can translate the English into German, or maybe I would be happy with translate the English into English. What it is, according to her publisher rowohl, it is a marketplace for fair trade products. That does not sound any conservative at all. It does not sound like somebody who believes in free markets, or that the issues in exploitative dictatorships should be changed on a political level, rather than that your supermarket choices should or could somehow have an impact on the exploitation of the workers in Sri Lanka or wherever. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. But it also reflects the entire religious mindset that the left has. I always say the left this, left that, but in Germany the big problem really is the Green Party. And there is a lot of talk about how much media enterprises are actually held by the Social Democrats, the former major left-wing party that is now in decline. They do have a lot of regional newspapers and media outlets that they do not openly say is theirs. But the Greens have also snuck in, and rowohl and its publisher Holzbrink is associated with the public broadcasters too. There is a show called 3 After 9. It is hosted by the chief editor of Zeit, Giovanni Di Lorenzo. He's also famous for having voted twice in the election, in the European election before this year's election, 5 years ago. Once he cast the vote for Italy, and once he cast the vote for Germany. So he does not really believe in democracy and everybody should have one voice. He doesn't, believe in the Western system at all. And that is what pretty much shines through. And he is given a talk show for that. Zeit is cooperating frequently with Panorama. Panorama is the news show hosted by Anja Reschke, who is also the leader of the politics office, or interior politics office to be more specific, of the North German broadcasting agency NDR, which is the largest section of the ARD. So that's a highly influential position, and they are obviously cooperating with Zeit and therefore with Giovanni Di Lorenzo. Giovanni Di Lorenzo also is the head of the Bell Tower News, that is supposedly a NGO fighting against right-wing extremism. And of course they mean now everybody with that. It had previously been called a Fight Against the Right, and it is also now edited by the former Stasi spy Annetta Kahane and her Amadeu Antonio Foundation. I've made a video about that foundation, and I will link it below. But before I go into too much detail, the Amadeu Antonio bank or foundation and so on, you can guess that there is a lot of corruption. You can tell by me going down the rabbit hole now to the Amadeu Antonio Foundation that this infiltration had been very successful, and that every organization seems to be linked and associated with some other organization, and in a very intransparent manner. They are now just a corrupt class of individuals opposing your average citizen. I think I have to stop this video at some point, and I hope that you get the larger picture of what can happen if people like Diana Kinnert, who are obviously not a member of the group that they claim they are, infiltrates all sorts of organizations and creates havoc. We have seen that a lot of times in Germany because everything here is intransparent. We do not get to directly elect our MPs or anybody. Actually, we do not directly vote those who run for office into the offices they run for. That is the big problem, and it allows a lot of corruption. And what you have as a result is people who are obviously free trade, Green Party, multicultural, blah blah blah, to present themselves as conservatives in a party that was never really as conservative as the Tories, for example, but that was at least a bit more down to earth than left-wing parties. And they are taking these parties and turn it into what is already radicalized and anti-democratic. So that was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.